Hello, let's start. I mean, we have people watching on YouTube. We have a number of people already here. I know that much more. Uh, there will be more people joining us. So, I mean, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you are. And I'm very excited here to have C-FAARER project with us today. And the reason is, I mean, as you know, BlueMissionAA is coordinating the Atlantic and Lighthouse. And we are very much aware that the potential of community-driven farming for regenerative aquaculture to impact positively, I mean, the restoration and preservation of coast and marine ecosystems and biodiversity in Atlantic and Arctic basins. For us, it's very important to link to other activities. Our lighthouse very much focus on restoration and preservation, but connecting with the blue economy and bringing, I mean, let's say, good aspects from aquaculture to help us on this regeneration is absolutely key for the success of the mission Ocean and Waters. So for us, it's very, very relevant to be here. And we have a lot of people from beyond Europe. I can see in the list, I can see also in the YouTube. So I hope we can also link up with us to develop, I mean, to implement C-FAARER's ideas beyond Europe. Okay, so I will pass now to Valerie. She will introduce the speaker and she'll run the show. I will be here behind the scenes helping with this meeting. So go, the floor is yours, Valerie.
Thank you, Jose, and thank you for helping me today with this webinar. So we are going to be starting with Dr. Darm Klepletia, excuse me, from the Trinity College Dublin. So he is a senior innovation researcher, manager, and consultant with a PhD from the University of Cambridge Engineering Department, MSc from Sussex in the Science and Technology Policy Research Unit, and a track record of delivering programs and projects related to innovation, technology, and business transformation, with 15 plus years experience at the nexus of academia, government, and industry. He is also a fellow of the Schumacher Institute for Sustainable Systems in the UK. Dr. Kopletia's research and interest focuses on transformative strategies to achieve goals that protect, restore, and regenerate the natural world. His work at Trinity College Dublin covers research and innovation proposal development, project coordination and management, operating in leading edge areas covering nature-based solutions, biodiversity, nature positive strategy, and climate resilience. He is a senior member of the Trinity College Dublin coordinating teams for 2 EC grants, C-FAARER and Go Nature Positive. Then we have our second speaker, Dr. Danielle Gallagher from Trinity College Dublin. Dr. Gallagher is a postdoctoral researcher at Trinity College Dublin working on the C-FAARER project. She is interested in climate change, mitigation, and bioremediation strategies from sustainable biofuel, low-carbon feedstock production, to enteric methane mitigation, as well as bioregional and community-driven strategies for climate resilience. On the C-FAARER project, she is conducting a transdisciplinary gap analysis on the potential for regenerative seaweed farming in the Atlantic and Arctic Sea Basin region, focusing on ocean farming in Norway and Ireland. Her background is in plant science, industrial biotechnology, and community-driven climate entrepreneurship. Previous to this, she was working on an EPA-funded project called Ireland's Climate Change Assessment, which will be published in 2024. She completed her PhD at Imperial College London on microbial strain engineering strategies as alternative and low carbon fuel sources. She is founder director of, Dula Bio, as a research-based startup investigating seaweed as a tool for greenhouse gas and nutrient waste reduction in an Irish context. And lastly, we have from Sea Going Green, Dominique van Straten, is a sustainability consultant and impact coach with 5 years of experience in supporting over 100 companies on their sustainability journey. With a wide range of experience in the for and nonprofit world and a background in global business and sustainability. She has been able to engage, enthuse, and motivate stakeholders to collaborate for a more regenerative world. On the C-FAARER project, she and her colleagues from Sea Going Green are responsible for the communication, dissemination, and engagement, including building skills, capacity, and supporting the creation of the Irish Seaweed Association. Sea Going Green was founded in 2017, established itself as a key player in the sustainable tourism consultancy space, distinguishing its work through partnerships with high-profile clients and impactful projects. With specialists in marine biology, international policy, environmental management, sustainable tourism, green branding and marketing, the team offers a comprehensive approach that sets it apart. I now turn it over to Dr. Darmkaplatya to start off. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much, Valerie and Jose, for the kind introduction. I will just share my screen now. Should be in full screen mode now. Thank you. No, thank you very much, Valerie and Jose, because you're doing a great job on the Lighthouse and bringing attention to some of the exciting work, projects, research that is out there. And we are grateful for this opportunity for C-FAARER to present in this session. So yeah, my name is Darm, and I am the coordinator of the C-FAARER project. And today, as mentioned, we have a very strong team providing a nice oversight of some of the work that we're doing on the C-FAARER project. Now I'm going to speed through some of these slides to make sure that my colleagues have a chance to speak as well. But if there's anything on these slides that are really interesting, please do get in touch. You can reach us through the website or through our social media pages on LinkedIn, etc. So yeah, I'm going to quickly provide an overview of the project, and then my colleagues will look at the feasibility aspects of regenerative aquaculture, and one of our outputs is creating a new seaweed association in Ireland, and then we'll take questions from you. So my particular session will focus on providing you an overview of the consortium, some of the overview of the project itself, and then I'm going to quickly present something that we've been working on. This is a conceptual framework and definition of regenerative ocean farming, and some potential drivers. So it's a kind of a taster of one of our deliverables. That's we've completed version 1, now working on version 2. So it's great to socialize some of that work and get some initial feedback from this audience. So before I begin, I should point out that we are EU missions funded. So grateful to the Horizon EU missions funded program for funding our work. And to give you an overview, we are essentially a 2-year project, so quite a short project, but we're just about under halfway through this particular project and we're a CSA, so a coordination and support action, so it's leveraging a lot of what is already out there. So yes, this is essentially what we hope to do in terms of promoting sustainable regenerative approaches in ocean farming. By ocean farming, I mean specifically we're focusing on seaweed. And we are looking at 2 particular contexts. So we've got the Norwegian Seaweed Association as a partner. So we're looking at SMEs there, what they're doing there, and then we're looking at the replication of that good practice and building an association in Ireland. So yes, I'll tell you a little bit more about our approach once I've covered who the other consortium partners are. So yes, I think I mentioned that I am based at Trinity College Dublin, and that we are the lead for this project. But the Trinity College Dublin is made up of 2 partners, the Trinity Business School where I am based, and the School of Natural Sciences where Danielle is based. And we have a range of other partners, SMEs, Research and Development Institute in NOFEMA, the SMEs being Red Rose and Horizon Newer, and we have the Seaweed Association, Norwegian Seaweed Association, and Sea Going Green. So to give you a quick overview of the project, we've got essentially 4 phases. First is the establishing the framework and requirements, and then we move into, which is the phase that we're into now, phase 2, carrying out assessments of feasibility towards adopting regenerative methods, and then later on we'll be focusing on establishing what those business models that could be enablers in terms of supporting adoption. And the other thing that NOFEMA leading on that is the consideration of the value chain and value-adding activities. So what we do with that seaweed to create value. So yeah, so this gives you an idea of the work packages that are involved in our project, and some of the deliverables that we hope to deliver. So initially in the assessment phase, it's about the feasibility reports, which will cover farming, business, environment, markets, and value chains. And then we will look at publishing and sharing insights from our work with the Norwegian Seaweed Association. So we'll provide both a technical and business perspective. And then, as I mentioned, we are working with the Norwegians to learn about what they are doing and how feasible the methods are in that context. But what we're also going to do is to try and demonstrate that we can replicate what we've learnt in that context in terms of building the equivalent of the NSA in Ireland. So establishing a twin cluster, we're pretty much ahead of the game in that respect. So we've got quite a lot of traction already in the very early stages of the project, and enthusiasm for developing this association. And what we will do is, for those of you who are looking at recommendations further afield beyond those 2 countries and globally as well, we'll be providing recommendations and a roadmap for others to follow. So that gives you an overview of the project. I'll just show you this as well, just very quickly. We'll revisit the value chain. This is the traditional farming ocean value chain as we see it. And this juxtaposes where our work packages focus on. So we are taking also just to show that we are looking across the value chain in terms of our research and our analysis. So I'm going to talk really briefly, give you a kind of sneak preview of some of the initial work that we've done. This is around, so we've produced a report which provides a conceptual framework. So I've taken a few extracts out of that report to share with you today. And we've got a version 1 of this report, and we'll be, based on the feedback that we've got from the European Commission, we'll be developing that report into a version 2, and hope to get that out and shared publicly. And what we'll do is build on some of the concepts that we've identified out there, look at more exemplars in Europe and beyond Europe, and then we'll try to demonstrate more clearly where we think some of the key features of a regenerative business align. We align both theory and practice. We'll see if we can do that in a more practical way in this version 2 of the report. And what we'll also do is try to back up that report again with some of the underpinning science that's out there, and get that published in a journal paper. So watch this space, and I'm just going to give you a very quick overview. So this is where we started. Here is the definition from the original funding call that we got funded from. And so, yeah, the EC has quite a comprehensive definition. I know members of the team really appreciated how wide-ranging it was. But what we have done on the project is come up with our own interpretation, and we've also tried to condense that definition. Can we convey in a very simple way, without losing too much, what is regenerative farming? So we think it's a form of marine enterprise that gives back more than it takes out. Talking to some of our colleagues, and one of our colleagues on our sister project, Cool Blue, this is certainly a theme that comes out on their side. And also, so that's regenerative ocean farming, but also what about community driven? So the business model itself. So the business of creating sustainable and mutually beneficial balance between social, economic and environmental interests, providing renewable and systemic benefits to all who hold an interest in the future wealth of marine and coastal life. It's quite an ideal picture, but there's a lot underneath. How do we get there? And hopefully that will be teased out in a lot of the reports that we're producing, both in the feasibility assessments and also some of the experience from the Norwegian context. What we've done here is to try and provide some sort of practical focus. So what do we expect a regenerative community-driven business to look like? Well, maybe they would be following some of these principles that we've outlined here. This may change before the end of the project, but this is what we're working with at the moment. So I'm not going to dwell too long. This just shows you quickly what we're thinking about in terms of the details. So in terms of the actual characteristics of what makes up a regenerative ocean farming system. So what we've done here is thought about, okay, well, what are those methodologies? So going down the horizontal on the left there, and what methodologies apply at different parts of the value chain. And then we juxtapose that against, okay, well, what are the benefits that we'll get from implementing those regenerative methodologies? And what are the potential impacts against some of the challenges that we're facing? So potential indicators there of environmental aspects, but also the socio-economic aspects. So yeah, again, this will change, but as I say, what we're planning to do is get a journal paper behind this, so present some of the science behind some of this thinking and some exemplars from industry, from business that are doing this, so that we can illustrate a practical approach of how this works out in the ocean. This is my last but one slide, and it's essentially, so as I said, I wanted to revisit the value chain to show, well, what could regenerative methods and community-based approaches look like? And these are potential areas of interest that are emerging, that we've identified, where we see potential novelty, potential innovation. But of course, yep, the devil is in the details. So watch this space. We'll hope to underpin some of that thinking with demonstrations of what actual practice looks like. So as I say, this is a conceptual framework. So this is the high-level picture. So yeah, this provides that high-level picture. So I just want to finish on this slide before handing over to Danielle. There's a really interesting report came out from the Irish government, and what we've done here is essentially modified it slightly, because I think a lot of it can be applied to the context that we're looking at in terms of some of the key factors that might drive the focus towards regenerative ocean farming. I think it's safe to say that most of the industry isn't regenerative at the moment, wherever you look across Europe. And a community business model is a highly novel idea. What does that look like? And we've got some interesting exemplars in our report. For example, we had Carrie Moore in Wales present at our initial kickoff, where they have a registered community benefit society as their business model. and they've shared some really interesting insights about how they are doing things in practice. So yeah, I think these could be some of the focal areas that we will need to overcome. These are some of the things that we're finding in terms of setting up the Irish Seaweed Association. So yeah, any questions you have, be interested in at the end of this presentation and taking those. But do get in touch with us afterwards if you have any questions about the conceptual framework and the work we're doing in that space. So yeah, I'll hand over to Danielle.
Thanks, Darm. So yeah, by way of introduction, at Trinity College Dublin, we're working on work package 2 of this project, which is tasked with conducting a set of feasibility studies that have already been mentioned. And these feasibility studies will look at aspects of seaweed farming in the Northeast Atlantic, so that regenerative principles can be incorporated alongside this growth of the seaweed industry that we're currently seeing in Europe. And today is an overview of the work. I'll talk a little bit about kind of existing cultivation techniques. So a really brief overview of some technology mapping, some preliminary findings from Norway in working with our partners at Norwegian Seaweed Association. And then I'll say a little bit about potential pathways to regenerative aquaculture that we're kind of uncovering so far at this stage in the project. So next slide, please, Darren. Thanks. Firstly, I wanted to give a little bit of context to seaweed farming methods. So yeah, the ability to grow seaweed today is as a result of accrued knowledge that has been gained over hundreds of years, over generations worth of coastal communities' work, and this has been done together with the marine environment. It's through these early simple systems that the basis for further innovation and inspiration for development has been provided. Common traditional methods of seaweed farming, these range from very basic fixed attachment systems like the raft and stake and rope systems that you can see in some of the images there, to the submerged systems, so the tube net system and floating longline methods that have been developed further into what we see today as the predominant method in seaweed cultivation. So while these earlier systems are basic and labor intense, they depend on site-specific conditions such as current, tide, wave action, water speed, nutrient uptake, light and temperature. They therefore rely on the use of seaweed species that have been well adapted to the surrounding environment, and highlights the importance of site-specific conditions and the relationship of adapted species to successful seaweed growing. So next slide, please. While these traditional methods have served coastal communities for generations, modern seaweed farming techniques are evolving to enhance efficiency, productivity, and sustainability through innovations in cultivation, seedling production, and farm management. A very brief overview of modern methods that can be seen today. They can be categorized into 3 cultivation systems depending on aspects of their design. So they're broadly known as linear, circular, or 2D systems. Of the linear systems, 2 that show the most promise in terms of feasibility are the macroalgae cultivation ring at Faroe Islands and the bioarchitecture lab cultivation grid at Chile, which you can see at the top image is the macroalgae cultivation ring, and the middle right is the bioarchitecture lab rig system. So key features of the macroalgae cultivation rig are that it can be submerged up to 150 meters of water depth, and this is able to withstand extreme offshore weather and sea conditions. It's modular and easy to replicate and scale up, whereas the BAL is also submerged system up to 60 meters. This can be operated at a cost comparable to wild harvested kelp, while demonstrating good yield at exposed and water sites. Of the circular systems, such as the subsurface ring structure, these systems typically borrow technology from the seafood aquaculture industry. They're promising in terms of automation and in generating new markets. The 2D fabric substrate systems, such as the seaweed carrier, these show advantages in terms of ease of harvest, ease of reseeding, and low cost. And there's an image of that system at the bottom right. So next slide, please. Thank you. So optimizing seaweed aquaculture towards regenerative processes, how can this happen? It involves adopting practices that are not only sustainably produce seaweed, but also enhance the health of marine ecosystems. And key strategies to achieve this include cultivation considerations, so looking at the use of native species that support local biodiversity and reduce the risk of introducing invasive species, and also looking at diversifying species, so the use of polyculture systems that reduce maybe disease risk and enhance ecosystem stability. Further practices include environmental impact reduction, minimizing input use, recycling nutrients, ecological benefit maximization, site selection and design, monitoring and management, community engagement and benefits, and research and innovation. And so by implementing these strategies, it's proposed that seaweed aquaculture can transition towards practices that not only produce valuable seaweed products, but this can also contribute positively to the health and resilience of coastal ecosystems. This is holistic an approach that's essential for achieving regenerative aquaculture systems in marine environments. Next slide, please. A key aspect of achieving this regenerative aquaculture, these regenerative aquaculture goals with technology is through integrated multi-trophic aquaculture, so IMTA, and in co-location of this IMTA process. So what IMTA is the co-cultivation of fed species such as finfish or shrimp together with mussels and oysters, along with deposit feeding invertebrates and macroalgae. And the whole principle of this system is that each species plays a role in closing the nutrient loop across trophic levels, and it's an example of the circular economy in nature. IMTA also holds scope for multi-use of offshore areas, bringing further environmental benefits from waste products while transforming them into valuable co-products. And an example of offshore utilization is the co-location of IMTA with wind farms, and this brings further economic advantage in utilizing a multi-purpose system to create added value from waste and additional area utilization. Next slide. So to bring it back again to the question of why regenerative, regenerative aquaculture it's an approach to aquaculture, as Dharma has already mentioned, that prioritizes the restoration and enhancement of ecosystem health while producing food or other valuable products for human well-being. This concept goes beyond sustainability by actively seeking to improve environmental conditions and promote biodiversity. And in this way, it represents a modern day approach to aquaculture management that tackles the global challenges we're facing by aligning with broader goals of climate resilience and marine ecosystems. The benefits of regenerative aquaculture are far-reaching. They include community development opportunities along with restoring the environment. And without changing the current model, the risks are very high, including the risk of aqua failure, so failure to meet current trajectory of seafood demand to feed a growing population. Next slide. So within this project, we work closely with the Norwegian Seaweed Association, as has already been mentioned, and to build a picture of the status of seaweed aquaculture in Norway. So this includes sort of an overview of key findings here. Overall, it's striking that Norway has grown to be Europe's largest producer of seaweed since experimental cultivations began just in 2005. So there are a lot of points to note in Norway's potential scale, along with their kind of rapidly developing seaweed sector. And naturally, there's a lot for this project to learn from this experience when taking the development further into more regenerative systems, such as key market drivers, and taking a look at potential barriers as well. So next slide. As an assessment of the regenerative potential for seaweed farming in Norway, we're also conducting our qualitative study in the form of online interviews with members of the NSA, so active seaweed growers in Norway, and we cover topics ranging from cultivation methods to markets to finance and business models, success factors, and motivation to transition to regenerative practices. The aim of this study will be to highlight key points of interest for development of seaweed cultivation in Norway, as well as translating these findings for Irish growers' interest. So we'll be conducting follow-on interviews with our Irish stakeholders from later on this year to build a picture for Irish relevance, and this will hopefully contribute to shaping goals of the Irish Seaweed Association that we're building. So next slide. Some key points of discussion from the interview so far, which may be of interest to this audience, are first of all on the need to optimize processes. So many steps in the seaweed farming process is in need of cultivation currently in Norway, from supply of seed stock to preservation. The companies described it making in-house iterations to improve processes very difficult, and they mentioned that support from R&D would be really helpful for their business to achieve this. Another common theme was in matching demand and supply. So yeah, this is often not balanced. Some companies have been storing their stock for years, not able to find a market, whereas others couldn't cultivate enough. So how do we solve this? One business works on a guarantee that their customer will take all their stock, which that worked on a small scale. Yeah, but it worked for them, so it could be a potential strategy going forward. Another theme that was interesting was the mention of trends and market bubbles. So the businesses are very wary of these kind of new magic climate solutions that have been very heavily marketed with no evidence. Many examples of these have been circulating repeatedly for the last 10 years, and this is coming from those in the business for a long time. So that says a lot. The high risk nature of securing reliable biomass makes it harder to innovate, and there needs to be a financial reward for companies to be regenerative if they are to incorporate kind of these additional activities or changes to their processes, changes to their infrastructure, their models, and it can't be self-financed. Similarly, there's no commercial interest really in restoring the environment, even though it's known that these activities are interlinked, and it was acknowledged in the interviews that these activities are interlinked. Interviewees could see that lower resource use, so no inputs, shared infrastructure, less waste, translated to financial gain. And every interviewee mentioned their desire to move away from plastic ropes, for example. And lastly, something to note in these interviews was that community engagement was embedded with all companies from the beginning, and the value of that was known to each company. So something to note around maybe social license with coastal communities and aquaculture, which will be equally as important for regenerative development going forward. Next slide. So taking a look at maybe how these findings reinforce the potential for known solutions to solving certain market demand and operational challenges. There are known issues that interfere with biomass cultivation. Some are noted here. So if companies could be supported to adapt their production in line with these or to mitigate these, it could help de-risk their farming operations. But they need to be supported in doing so. As mentioned, the guaranteed markets before cultivation was an interesting strategy. This works this works on a small scale, localized cultivation farms. Easier models to guarantee a customer for stock. It was interesting that these kind of alternative models could lend themselves to building the blue bioeconomy more in line with socio-ecological principles, and that's something that we'll be investigating a bit more within this project. So yeah, this is the last slide now. So overall, there is still a lot of work to do if we are to transform aquaculture models towards more regenerative systems that are ecologically, socially regenerative as well as economically viable. So technology, while it's helpful, it won't close the gap fully for future demand or nor solve the sector's environmental issues. And it's essential that we diversify away from fed aquaculture towards regenerative aquaculture to include bivalves and seaweed. But this requires significant capital investment. Up to the range of $55 billion. And yes, again, this can't be self-financed by the companies themselves. A note again about how social license interacts with the industry. This needs to be actively preserved along with the community the sector is operating with. It's essential to maintain this integrity going forward. So with that, I will hand it over to my colleague Dominique, who is going to discuss aspects of the project further. Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle. And hello, everyone. Great to see some questions in the chat already. Keep them coming. So I'll be sharing a bit more about how we're creating this new association, the Irish Seaweed Association, as well as building that community up on the Connecting Nature Enterprise platform. So the Irish Seaweed Association is one of the deliverables of our project, and we're working together with the Norwegian Seaweed Association to be kind of that, they're the example that we're building this off. And what we've done so far is we have had our initial kind of start of the project workshop in November last year, where we had a lot of great stakeholders of the seaweed industry in the room, and we looked at what are your needs, what are your challenges, as well as your motivation in this industry, as well as kind of looking at what is the need and why is there a need for an Irish Seaweed Association. And I'll continue a little bit about that later, but what we really wanted to highlight today as well is kind of why we're doing this, and also going to show you what we've been doing so far. And one of the key aspects of the association is also that we're really promoting the community-driven and environmentally sustainable practices with this. So why are we doing this, or why is there a need for the Irish Seaweed Association? So essentially, what we've heard in all of the times that we've spoken to stakeholders is that there really is, the fact that the seaweed farming industry in Ireland deserves that focus and representation to generate the domestic growth that the industry could have, but also to have that united front. There are a lot of challenges that need to be tackled in order for the seaweed industry to thrive, and a united front will absolutely help and support that. So when we did that first workshop, we went really deep into the needs of them and what they wanted to see in an association. So what we've heard mostly is that there really is a need to have government contact, and also look at, for example, that it should cover the entire value chain, be inclusive of all of the different stakeholders across the value chain, whether regenerative or not yet. And we really want to make sure that everyone can join this association in order to become regenerative, for example, or community-driven. It really should be a community for shared resources as well as expertise. One of the things that is really important is that it's going to be member-led, and that it should be having a clear mission and vision as well. But again, what we really heard is that it should have, the industry needs a united voice it needs to be a force in order to stick together to tackle the challenges that it has. And those challenges, as you can see, there are a few more bubbles on the screen here now. And this is just scraping the surface. We had a lot of challenges, but these were the ones that we saw the most coming up. And as you can see, there's a lot of lack in a few different areas. So there's a lack of funding, lack of governmental support, lack of trust within the industry, lack of labor availability. There's no scalability, and also it's a smaller bubble, but should actually be maybe the biggest bubble, because the one thing that keeps on returning is the fact that policy and legislation and licensing is quite difficult at the moment. In order to get licenses and working around policies and legislation is just really a struggle at the moment. So having a united force to tackle that, having a streamlined process for licensing would definitely be of much help. Other than that, we saw that costs are rising as well as sea temperature. So how to tackle that. And that there is still also a lack of will for regenerative practices. So a lot of challenges that need to be tackled, but luckily there is a lot of motivation to start this association and to join this association. So what we've seen is that people really like to build trust within the industry. They like to collaborate. They want to share knowledge. There's just not a place for it. So it was great to see that there is this kind of force within them that wants to be stronger together, to grow together, to grow the interest in the industry. What's not on here is marketing support. So together there could be potentially more marketing support, but also maybe easier access to funding. And also together they could grow a social understanding, which would grow the industry hopefully as well. So there's a lot of motivation to join an association or to start an association. And one of the beautiful things we've done at the end of that first workshop was asking each other about what is your hope for the future of the Irish seaweed industry. And these are just a few of the examples that came up. And as you read these hope messages from the people that attended, you can definitely feel that there is a lot of emotion, there's a lot of motivation, there's a lot of hope that an association will help to fund, to engage, to really bring the industry together and support each other in growing the industry. So after that initial workshop, we've had a few more meetings with a interim board that we have set up for the association, as well as with community members to look at a terms of reference, as well as kind of what else, how to structure, what's the governance of this association, etc. We have had a few iterations of that now. We looked at the scope and boundaries of the association, as well as what kind of membership could it look like. But what was the sentiment of the latest board meeting was really that it just comes down to the fact that it is very much needed and that there are significant advantages of collective action, as well as that the idea of regenerative seaweed farming is underscoring the importance of environmentally sustainable practices that really contribute positively to marine ecosystems. So yeah, the appetite is there, the need is there, And from recent developments or documents from the government, it definitely shows that it is an essential element in growing the industry to have an association. So in order to build this association, we have created a community on CONNEP, which is the Connecting Nature Enterprise platform. It's an online marketplace that connects buyers, enterprises, and a lot of people in the value chain. Currently, we have not 11, as you can see on the screen, but we're growing fast. It's a new a new community, and we're fast growing. But currently, we have 26 members. But on the entire platform, there are different communities, not just the regenerative ocean farming and production community, but there are many more communities with nature-based solutions. And in total, there are 1,000 members and 300 nature-based enterprises. So it's a really exciting platform to be a part of. On the community that we have created, there are a few features. So there is a forum, there's an events page, a news page, there's a media center to really share knowledge and resources. There's an opportunity page as well to post jobs, to find people. And there is a project and community showcase. So really a chance to showcase your company as well as potential projects, but also to find other potential partners to work with. For example, harvesters that want to look for producers and the likes. And then we have 2 dedicated private areas for just the Iris Association and the board area. The ocean farming community is for everyone along the value chain in any country or area where you're at. So if you would like to be part of this and you're in the ocean farming industry and interested in regenerative practices, then do feel free to sign up on the platform. This is a QR code. I'll pause here for a second so you can have time to scan the QR code and enter the platform. It's a fairly straightforward sign up process. I believe it only asks for your name and email, and then you're good to go. If I'm going too fast and you want to see it later on, feel free to let us know and we can send a link as well. But this is what it should look like. You can then, if you've signed up, you can go to the Regenerative Ocean Farming and Production community and join that group. And yeah, feel free to engage, ask questions to the members that are already there. And we are really happy to welcome you there and to share knowledge about this exciting new time that we're in. Apart from that, we would also really like to hear from you. So please do reach out to us on info@cfaarer.eu if you use different species of macroalgae in different contexts, but also if you can share your project's effectiveness and benefits of biodiverse sites in different sea basins, and if you work with community-driven business models, we'd love to hear your experiences or your research on that. And lastly, if you have set up groups and associations dedicated to sustainable or regenerative ocean farming, please reach out. We love to collaborate and see whether there are synergies or ways that we can learn from each other. So that's all from me. I believe I'm handing it over again to someone else, but otherwise we can go to chat.
Yes. Hi. Thank you. Thank you very much, all of you, for your presentations and a really interesting project and ending on both the messages of hope and also the Connecting Nature Enterprise platform. That is a fantastic, I guess, app, maybe. I don't know how you call that, but the platform through your phone. I could see a lot of people signing up to that and being a really useful space for engaging and exchanging and learning. So fantastic. Glad that you shared that on this platform. So we already have quite a few questions, and I've also jotted down some of my own. And I see that some of you have been already answering some of these questions, but I'm going to still read them out loud because just for our audience that's here live and listening, and for future, for people that are listening to the video. So the first question comes from Clara Manuel, and she's asking Dr. Darm, she says, control of our land, indigenous community sovereignty is an important driver as well. How do you see the participation of indigenous communities in this process?
Yeah, so I think you'll be able to see. I don't know if the audience can see, but I've put in an answer saying, yeah, really important. A lot of the regenerative movements have come out of this sort of focus on indigenous communities sovereignty and focusing on organic methods as well. And I think we can learn from what has been done on the land, so the regenerative agriculture on the land, and the methods behind that, which is taking place not just in Europe but globally. So methods of working with nature, avoiding pesticides, avoiding contaminating the environment, taking a closed loop approach where you're not using so much inputs into the farming process. You're trying to gain as much self-sufficiency as possible. Work with natural predators to deal with pests. But yeah, no, I mean, let's be clear, it's a real challenge. The power bases and the industries that are out there are well established and they have a lot of money. So yeah, it's important that we support indigenous communities to take up some of these processes and take them on the journey with us. And it's what's encouraging is on the European side, the European Commission funding landscape is starting to use this language of adopting indigenous wisdom, indigenous methods. So that's something that's new and hasn't been there before, and so it's an exciting time to divert some of that funding, some of that attention towards that issue, and quite frankly, indigenous methods have been working regeneratively and working with nature for a lot longer than many commercial farming methods. So yeah, there's a lot of potential there.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. I'm really glad you mentioned it. I just came back from the UN Ocean Decade Conference, and I wanted to mention too that this was a very hot topic that was raised over and over again in a lot of sessions. And it was stressed the need to bring back the human rights-based approach in aquaculture. And especially they showcased that a lot of these integrated multi-trophic aquaculture systems that they have are quite resilient to climate change and to a lot of other issues happening in whatever local area they're in. And so we are in dire kind of need of having these indigenous community kind of IMTAs, and we need to study them more. So that was really highlighted during the conference. Okay, so and then I think we covered a little bit the land, kind of comparing it to land. So maybe we'll move on to the next question. And that is so from Carlos Garcia. Monitoring requires skills, baseline data, and lots of sensing technologies. How can emerging economies develop endogenous capacities and low-cost technologies to implement regenerative aquaculture projects. Sorry. Who would like to take that? Is it Danielle, perhaps?
Yeah, I can give it a go. Thanks for the question. It's really interesting. I think it probably comes back to the community-led seaweed farming aspect of this, and that it's essential to engage with local stakeholders in kind of, yeah, the implementation and management of these seaweed cultivation initiatives. And how to do that, I guess, yeah, empower communities to kind of take ownership of the initiatives, and kind of training and support would be, yeah, to leverage that local expertise that already exists in coastal communities, and develop the capacity further. Benefit sharing is so essential in promoting kind of social equity, yeah, fairness and well-being. And how to do this, I'm not sure. I guess it's just capacity building. It has to be on the ground, human-led capacity building. Yeah, I don't know if if any of my colleagues want to come in on this. I'm not sure if I'm covering this very well.
Possibly not technology related, although there's a lot of use of sensors, but there's the other project that we're aware of, Agora, I think is it. Yeah, Valerie. They're doing some. Take a look at their website. They're doing some interesting stuff. So, looking at a system of activities where communities involved. And I think it's Iceland. They're one of their pilot studies. There's some islands off Iceland, and there's this great diagram showing involvement in citizen science, schools getting involved in observation of nature and the environment, and recordings of that as data. I suppose there is some low tech, low cost ways of doing this. If you take a coordinated, and as Danielle said, a community based approach, there's some real possibilities there.
Thank you for that. And what came to mind too for me was maybe resources as well, because it does require money investment to do monitoring, doesn't it? Evaluation. I know that's something projects often unfortunately kind of come short on. But moving on to then Talita Firmau. Her regenerative aquaculture looks very promising. Can you give us any examples of successful projects in tropical countries or small islands?
It's a difficult one to answer, isn't it? Because our focus is, and our funding is based in Ireland and Norway. But yeah, no, I think it would be great to have studies making comparative analysis, comparing the work that we're doing, the Atlantic Arctic Sea Basin, with other sea basins outside of Europe. So it's a good question.
Yeah, we can. I've definitely heard of quite a few in South America, but I would have to research us to getting the information. But we could also ask maybe our audience, our greater audience, to send us in some examples of that. So I'll move on to the next one. Ilana Maru asks, investors are risk averse and federal funds for innovation are very scarce. In your opinion, which are the main barriers for the implementation of projects in developing countries?
Well, if I could start off the answer, I mean, the problems are universal. If you think you're in Europe and you're getting funding for regenerative, think again. It's really difficult, and I think the ocean farmers are telling us that there are challenges here, as not just in developing countries. But we're starting to see some encouraging signs. That I saw on LinkedIn. There's a new a new accelerator, innovation accelerator focused on regenerative methods for farming and aquaculture. That's what, a few months old. So yeah, we're starting to see signs that the investment community, the financial institutions are starting to pay attention, but it is, forgive the pun, a drop in the ocean. Danielle.
Maybe, oh yeah, go ahead. I was just gonna say, perhaps if you could drop that in the chat box, the innovation accelerator that you were mentioning. And yeah, that was one of my questions I had formulated as well around de-risking. And I was thinking of insurance, parametric kind of products or something like that that could help perhaps with the de-risking, as well as, excuse me, if these aquaculture farmers require certain loans, that too can be a way to get more favorable rates on your loans, for example, if you are doing regenerative practices. Just some ideas that popped in my head for de-risking. Excuse me, I've got like a frog in my throat suddenly. All right, so moving on maybe to Lars Goldman. Do you consider the potential for sequestering CO2 by seaweed? So that's a question, sorry. As a CDR negative emissions method, we work on that at NIVA, Norway, Blue Forests.
Yeah, I can start it off. We do consider it. The potential is there, but we also need to be very careful with this. It needs to be measured. It needs to be verified in order to report this and to monitor it. So while seaweed does take up carbon dioxide, it also, it enters back into the carbon cycle. So it, where is the carbon going? We need to be able to trace this in order to report that it's a carbon dioxide removal technology. Yeah, so that's where we are in that aspect.
I think that's a space that is really being looked at a lot, that I hear of. And yeah, so the opportunities there, and maybe also kind of the ecosystem benefits that could come back to the fishers or the company, for maybe providing this sequestration support. But it's very case specific and very geographic specific, is what I've heard as well. So we have to, tread on that lightly and really research it more. Okay, so I'll move on to the next one then. So great talk, Dr. Dominique. This is from Carlos Garcia. How do you factor climate change in your regeneration strategies? This includes anticipating the migration of species to different temperature zones, as well as counting for the potential establishment of new resident species due to the climate shifts or human stressors.
Well, I don't think that was for me. I'm happy to pass this on to my colleagues that are probably better equipped to answer that.
Danielle.
Yeah, so factoring climate change in with regenerative strategies, they're one and the same. Kind of, you can't talk about regenerative strategies without considering the effect that climate change will have on what we can grow in the ocean, what's possible. It's already changing on a year-by-year basis. In Ireland, anyway, the rise in sea temperature is really shifting the window of cultivating seaweed at the moment at the sea, and biofouling rates, things like that. So yeah, it's about kind of adaptation to climate change in the ocean, and yeah, migration of species to different temperature zones. Of course, yeah, that's a huge topic that we need to be mindful of especially when we're considering what becomes native to an area, what becomes invasive and a problem species. yeah, this is evolving all the time. I don't know how to kind of wrap this up in a soundbite, but it's definitely something that they're interlinked, climate change and regenerative strategies for sure.
Maybe it's one of the questions we can be asking our survey and interview work. What specific strategies have farmers been experimenting with?
Okay, thank you. I see we're a little over the hour. If it's okay, we still have a few questions that I'd love to pose for those that can stay on with us. I understand if you have to drop off. And I know it's quite late for Dominique, who's in Australia. So maybe I'll jump over to a question for you, Dominique. You mentioned the challenges. One of the challenges was lack of trust. I was interested in hearing a bit more about that. Why? What's behind that?
Well, there's kind of the lack of trust within the industry, and I think that comes from also not having that contact with the government and not being able to get the licensing and permits and all of that they need. So they're like one of the people that we've talked to during the first workshop waited 12 years for a permit. So that's a long time, and I think that's kind of like where there's a bit of a lack in trust and collaboration that will definitely need to be restored in order to really drive this forward.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Yeah, this kind of touches upon something that I had a question on regarding that trust and regarding, I guess, that security aspect of it, if you will, is how much of this integrated multi-trophic agriculture is perhaps included within a maritime spatial plan so that it's safeguarded, to be able to be there and not be disturbed or encroached upon. I know not all countries have a maritime spatial plan, but maybe they have local plans, or perhaps some of these are also in even private areas, because some countries have quite a lot of private coastal zones, far-reaching. So, yeah. Can you say something about that, maybe?
Danielle.
Just briefly, in Norway at least, the interviewees expressed that there were significant barriers to the IMTA, the success of IMTA for them, just due to conflict of area usage mainly, and also the regulation around what they can grow close to the nutrient levels that come off of salmon farms. So, which is the whole point of IMTA, is to combat that nutrient level. So yeah, it's kind of an interesting barrier to what should be kind of a low-hanging fruit there at least. So yeah, and in terms of Ireland, yeah, I'm not sure so far there's much happening past the research capacity anyway. There's no official IMTA commercial operations in Ireland at least.
Okay, thank you. And just moving then to, you mentioned incentives. What incentives would support regenerative farming? Do you list a few?
Financial would be the main incentive for any business to change their operations or models, or to take on additional risk. They need to have financial support to do that. R&D support, that would be a huge incentive for them to kind of be able to innovate, be able to take on a little bit of risk in their processes, and to have the knowledge base there as well through research and development would be huge. So to me, financial and research and development would be the main ones.
Yeah, and I think also thinking outside of the box as well. I mentioned learning from movements on the land and in terms of regenerative agriculture. One of the innovations is around community supported agriculture, providing the finance from the community, from the local coastal community where possible, to invest in those community owned businesses. That's sometimes a way of getting around the traditional route of financing a business. So yeah, thinking outside of the box sometimes where it necessitates an alternative approach.
Thank you. And last question is, do you think that the ambitious aquaculture production objectives at European level are compatible with regenerative aquaculture? I think great question. That's from Celine Jacob.
And we can start, Darren.
That's the $1 million question, isn't it? That's come up quite a lot. So yeah, our Norwegian colleagues showed us a graph of the ambition for Norway. You know, the graph of how much in terms of tonnage of seaweed, and then the reality being somewhere far behind. But then, if you scale to that level, is it sustainable, and is it regenerative? And yeah, I think there are some huge concerns, huge worries about how that ambition is reached, and do we end up with, you know, some of the operations that we see in Asia, where a regenerative method is sacrificed for a scale and economics based approach. And I think we've got to think very hard in Europe, in particular, what method do we want to go down, what route, and think about how to do it as sustainably as possible. And if you've had our sister project, Cool Blue, has a view on it. There is a development of a regenerative manifesto. It's work in progress, I believe, for the sort of Nordic Scandinavian region. Be really interested in working with them and others to create a manifesto for the European ocean basin to find common ground on, can we ensure that a regenerative method is considered first rather than an unsustainable approach. Obviously that's an ideal goal, but we should start that difficult process and sort of address the challenges as much as we can.
Great answer, because I was thinking too, it goes back to that issue of space and risk. If you boom it to the size that I think maybe the European Union Commission has kind of set with their ambitions. Yeah. Okay, wonderful. I'm sorry I did not get to all the questions. I apologize to the audience. Perhaps if we can send those to the speakers, and if you have time, you can maybe post some answers. But thank you very much. This was really informative, and I know that it is something that is hugely of interest to a global community. And many are looking at it. I think there's going to be a lot of growth in this area to be watched and to be followed. So looking forward to learning from others in their countries, their own experiences. And how much investment this really requires as well. Is there anything else you'd like to finish on, the speakers?
No, just say thanks for this opportunity, and the engagement with the questions were great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, thank you to our audience, and brilliant questions, everyone, and speakers. Thank you.
Yes,
Jose?
thank you very much. Lots of questions. Thank you so much.
It's an exciting area for us to be working in. Yeah, thank you.
Very exciting. as you have seen, a lot of interest from countries beyond Europe, because they're very much involved on these conservation efforts, and also they want to, let's say, to pay attention to food security. So, I mean, your ideas were more than welcome for a very large audience. I'm sure